Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and today I want to check out the new ThunderCats Ultimates, Lion-O and Mumm-Ra the Ever-Living, the toy versions. Yeah, so we got new paint decos on these ThunderCats Ultimates figures that have been going for several years now over at Super7. Originally started way back with Mattel and then was taken over by Super7. But this is one of those repaints that got me, man, because I am a sucker. So as far as I know, these are the exact same molds for Lion-O and Mumm-Ra the Ever-Living, but now we've got them decoed like their vintage LJN action figures. And because I'm a sucker for nostalgia, these drew me in and I bought them, and now we're going to open them up and take a look at them both together in this video today. So, as you can see, they do come in those same window boxes that the Ultimates typically come in. You saw me remove those slip covers there that were nice and tight, but the windows fully showcase our very brightly colored action figures on the inside, all their accessories. Mumm-Ra, of course, the larger of the two figures. And if we rotate around to the back side of the boxes, look, even the artwork on the back is classic action figure colored. I love it. Look, Mumm-Ra's eyes are even all blacked out like the vintage toy, which makes him look extra creepy. Holy cow. I don't know. Honestly, these look really fun. I love these colors. So let's go ahead and get the figures pulled out of these window boxes and we'll check them out. We'll get a closer look at them. We'll compare them to the other versions as well as the classic LJN action figures. All right, we've got Lion-O and Mumm-Ra outside of those boxes, bringing in the tape measure here. You can see Lion-O is at the 7-inch scale, while Mumm-Ra, with his little hat deal there, goes all the way up to 9 inches tall. So if you already had the other Lion-O and Mumm-Ra, you pretty much know what to expect with their scale. Mumm-Ra is massive, huge figure. So we're going to go ahead and look at these one by one. So I'm going to move Mumm-Ra out of the way for the time being. And we're going to go ahead and start things off by looking at Lion-O here. Now, a lot of this is going to be comparisons because I want to show you guys what came before it, what is similar, and what is different. But let's run down the figure here real quick. You guys probably know what to expect as far as your articulation goes. But just to go over it, you got a ball joint at the head there. You got the shoulders that allow the arms to go outwards, forwards, and backwards. A swivel at the elbow, a single joint at the elbow. You've got a swivel at the wrist as well as a hinge joint at the wrist there. You got that ab crunch there. And then the torso can also swivel right there at the waist. You got those ball-like hinges at the thighs so the legs can go outwards, forwards, backwards, as well as swivel at the thigh. You have a single joint at the knee. The boots also swivel, and then the ankles can move forwards and backwards, and they do also rock side to side. And I will say, with Lion-O here, all of the articulation feels nice and solid, which is really good. So all of it feels good. He's not loose. He's not wobbly. Everything holds exactly as you would expect it to. Now, this particular figure does come with some swappable parts. So he's got several different hands. So it is worth mentioning he's got these open kind of clawed hands here. He's got one for each side. Then he's got 2 different pairs of gripping hands. And at first I was like, well, these are the same. Why are they different? But it's important to point out that the hinge joints are different. You have some hands where the hinge joints go up and down, and some where they just move, in and out with the hands in and out. Now, this is good for the sword because when you bring in the Sword of Omens and you put it in the hand where the hinge joint is on top and bottom, that actually allows him to be able to hold the sword aloft, hold it up in the air. He holds his sword better than any He-Man figure basically does. Most He-Man figures, I will say. So he does get a good tight grip on the Sword of Omens with the gripping hand for whichever hand that you want to use there. Now, this Sword of Omens is a bit different than what we got before. You'll notice that the Cats logo on the hilt is much more pronounced. It's like a 3D sculpt this time around rather than being printed on. Also, the blade seems a little bit longer. It's almost identical otherwise, but is designed much more like that of the vintage toy, of course, with the colors there as well. So I do appreciate that we've got some new stuff going on on here. And then to go right along with that, we do also have one of the clawed hands. And this works very nicely because it is just a peg where you would remove the left hand and you would plug the claw glove right into that socket. It fits really good. And this is solid red, just like on the vintage toy. Now, the colors here are bright and vibrant. They look very good, and they come straight from that vintage action figure. And, you know, that's what was so appealing to me about this, because as much as I loved that the first ThunderCats figures that we got were based on the way they looked in the animation, there's always going to be that nostalgia tied to the vintage action figures. And that's exactly what's going on here, because the second I saw them in these colors, I was taken back to that toy that I had as a kid, and I just love it. I think it looks really, really good on this guy. Now, one thing that's really cool about this, it is not just a straight repaint of what we had before. So let's go ahead and do our first little bit of comparison time here. Let's bring in the standard release of Lion-O and stand them side by side. So first, let's talk about that claw glove. Obviously, these are different sculpts here. This one on the new figure is much more inspired by the way the claw glove looked on the vintage toy. And then also the head sculpt there. So you can see we do have a different face, and the style of the hair looks a lot more like that of the vintage toy. It's also worth noting we have an interchangeable head, so if you want to swap off this more basic somber look there on his face, it's just on a ball joint at the neck, and then we can easily pop on the alternate head, which has got this teeth gritting look there for like combat poses and everything. But again, it is also got that same new hair that is styled after the vintage action figure. So that's really cool. I think that new head and this all red glove there, the claw glove, do a great job of making this look so much more like the vintage action figure. And these really do look like two completely separate figures when you're standing them side by side. It is worth noting, though, that the rest of the figure does seem to be full reuse. The body is exactly the same. The legs, the gloves, the boots there, all of this is the same. It's just got the new brighter paint deco. So it's really just that head sculpt and this claw glove that make all the difference. So one of the things that I want to talk about there is the fact that we do have this little peg sticking off of the side of Lion-O's belt. Now that's because past versions of Lion-O have come with a version of the claw glove that you can hang off of his belt. This one does not come with an extra claw glove. You only get the one that plugs onto his hand. So we have less accessories with this figure. As a result, we just have this peg hanging off of his belt that is there for no reason. And that kind of bugs me. I guess you could say, well, that's where you would hang the claw glove normally, except, we don't have that peg sticking off the vintage toy. You don't see that peg sticking off of the side of Lion-O's belt typically. I don't know. It just bothers me that there's a peg there that is for nothing. So would have been nice if we had an extra glove to hang off of it, so at least there was a reason for it. Otherwise, I kind of wish that peg wasn't there. Otherwise, I think this guy looks incredibly cool. And let's go ahead and do this as well. It's comparison time. Let's bring in that vintage LJN action figure so that you can see these guys standing side by side, really see the similarities there. They got the colors incredibly close to the vintage ones, so I think that is pretty nice. All right, so that's going to bring us over here to Mumm-Ra, the ever-living. The majority of this figure is just recycled from the existing Mumm-Ra action figure that Super7 has already released. But we do have some new things, including that head sculpt there. This time around, it is modeled much more after that of the vintage toy, including you got that bald head, you've got those blacked out eyes, the shape of his mouth with his teeth there. Looks like it comes straight off the vintage figure, and the headdress is removable. This is also a new design here that looks like the vintage toy. It's removable like the vintage toy. So that's pretty cool. It's all red with just the black snakes on top. It's kind of loose fitting on his head. I will say, it falls off pretty easy there. So I do wish it was a little bit of a tighter fit, but that's probably being a little nitpicky because otherwise it looks just fine. The wraps all seem to be the same ones from the other release of Mumm-Ra. I will say that they look like they've changed these a little bit from the original 3D renders when they put these up for pre-order, because the wraps going around his neck on that one were black and the strap going around here was red, and they seem like they've swapped those colors there. But when we look at it against the vintage action figure, you can see that they don't really match up to that anyway, because the design of them, since they just took these from the cartoon inspired one, it's probably really not that big of a deal. But I don't know, that might bother some people that those colors were reversed. But otherwise, this guy looks very colorful, he's very vibrant, and the colors are very close to the vintage one, but they aren't quite exact, which you guys will see in just a minute. It is worth noting that he also comes with a slew of interchangeable parts. He's got 2 gripping hands, he's got 2 closed fists, and he's also got 2 of the open clawed hands there. All of these can be easily swapped out just by pulling the hands out of the joints at the wrist. And we've also got a swappable head where he's got gritting teeth, if you would prefer to have that, instead of that weird open mouth from the vintage toy. So all of the articulation on this guy is also very strong, very tight. All of the joints are holding really good. So I am very pleased with that. That is one area where these are definitely excelling. So I'm very happy to see all of the joints nice and tight on these guys. So aside from those interchangeable parts, he also comes with these 2 weapons, which again, modeled after that of the vintage toy. This is the toy version of the Sword of Plundar. So we can put that in his hand, and then we've also got this cool dagger over here, and his gripping hands do a great job of holding on to both of those weapons. So let's go ahead and do some Mumm-Ra comparison time. I'll bring in that standard release of Mumm-Ra that Super7 already put out. Again, based on his cartoon design. You can see him standing side by side with this new toy version of Mumm-Ra. So the bodies themselves are the same. The emblem is painted a little different on his chest, but otherwise, like you can see, it's the same feet, the same legs, the same skirt piece. The wraps do appear to be the same around his neck and everything there. He's got the same spiked bracelets on the arms. So we're missing the wraps over on this side of his arms over here. And then we just have that new head and the new weapons. So, and again, no cape because the vintage toy did not have a cape. But these are 2 very different looks for Mumm-Ra. And it's one of those things that you don't really notice until you get them side by side. It's pretty crazy. But this new one does a really good job of mimicking the look of the vintage action figure. So if we bring that in here, you can look at these 2 side by side. And again, great design here. Really does capture the feel of that vintage toy. But this is one part where I will say that while the Lion-O colors were very close, the skin tone on this Mumm-Ra isn't quite there. It was a little bit more of a bluish gray on the vintage toy, where we've got a bit more of a green vibe going on the Super7 one. Not too bad. And here you can see what I was talking about with the ribbons, how it's like red, black, black, red, black on the vintage toy. And the design of them doesn't quite match up with the reused cartoon version over here. But again, I personally don't think that's too big of a deal. I think this is still a really fun nod to the vintage toy. So there you go, my friends. That is a look at the brand new toy versions of the Ultimates Lion-O and Mumm-Ra action figures. At first when these were revealed, I thought they looked cool. I didn't know if I personally needed them for my collection, but the more I kept looking at them, the more I realized I was so tied to these classic toy looks. There's definitely some serious nostalgia going on here, and that's all it is. I mean, I am directly tied to these because they look like the toys I had as a kid. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think that's why so many people want the Silverhawks to look like the old toys, because we all remember having those toys as kids. I love the animated versions of these ThunderCats figures. I think they're fantastic, but I think it's really fun having this Lion-O and Mumm-Ra. These are the only 2 that I bought. They were the only ones I really were interested in. I probably won't go much further with toy variants in this particular line, but I do like these. I'm glad I have them. The prices on them, they're $55 is the price on Lion-O, which is like standard Ultimates price. But this Mumm-Ra is a $75 action figure, so he was a bit expensive. And they come with less stuff than the standard releases, so that is worth mentioning. I was able to order mine through BigBadToyStore.com, where they are still in stock as of the recording of this video. So thank you guys so very much for watching, and until next time.